All right. Hey guys, this is Rome, Tennessee Progressive League, coming back today, speaking with someone that I have just discovered. I think you guys will be impressed with this organization and what they're trying to achieve. I'm speaking with Taylor, and she's with the Chattanooga chapter of Moms for Social Justice. That's right, social justice. We're still doing that. And if Taylor, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Rome. I appreciate it. I'm Taylor Lyons. I am one of the co-founders, and I'm the community outreach director for the Chattanooga Moms for Social Justice. We are the original organization. We have a few chapters scattered throughout the country at this point, and as recently as this week, as a result of one of my remarks at the school board going a little bit viral, I guess. We've had several women in different parts of the country reach out to us over the last couple of days asking how they can start chapters of MSJ in their city. So we're really excited to have some of those conversations because ultimately we would love to see super progressive groups of moms pop up all over the country to sort of push back on what we're seeing from the right, which is, super conservative mothers groups popping up and taking over school boards.
Right, they almost take the oxygen out the room. If you didn't know better, you would think that is the only group of moms out there that have an opinion about something.
Well, they like to say that they speak for parents. They like to say that they're representing parents and children. We would respectfully say that we've been working in this space for many years, and they certainly don't represent the parents that I know or me.
Right. I didn't know that you guys were the original group, so that's even more impressive. Um, being in Chattanooga, I know you guys are sort of like close to Atlanta, sort of close to Georgia, and you guys would be, not too far away from Marjorie Taylor Greene type area. Do you guys ever hear or like see of any of her like constituents, I guess, like pushing back against you, or you guys like have local Chattanooga groups that are sort of pushing back against you?
Well, we were able to, quietly work, I guess, under the radar for a couple of years. We've been doing, events around our community since 2017. We've been doing story hours for children around the topics of, how to talk about racism, how to talk about um, pride and representation for our queer kids and our queer families. If we tried to do those events now, I think they would be a lot more controversial in this climate. But my point is, we've been working in and around our community for 3 or 4 years now. It really wasn't until the last eight months and this surgence of far right parent groups attacking things like masking in schools. We make a joke that they have like a moral panic bingo card. At first it was the masks, then it was CRT, then it was books containing obscenity. Next, they're going to go after guidance counselors and social emotional learning. So it wasn't until those parent groups popped up that all of a sudden we had a huge target on our backs. Because one of the things that we did in our second year of existence is start a social project called the Classroom Library Project. And that's exactly what it sounds like. We went into Chattanooga's, grossly underfunded schools. And, we're a small group. We truly are a grassroots organization. So we didn't have the funds to overhaul an entire school's library, but what we could do is one classroom at a time. So we were crowdsourcing from our community to go into a teacher's classroom and bring in, new furniture for the kids, rugs, bookshelves, and then most importantly, to give them new books and not just any books. And that's what ended up being so controversial. We wanted the books that we put in those libraries to look like the kids who were reading them. So, authors of color, about protagonists of color, LGBTQ titles, and storylines, and holy, I'm gonna refrain from cursing. I'm sorry. That has been the center of all this controversy, is that we are putting quote unquote woke books into the hands of kids and trying to indoctrinate them.
It's funny, and we were talking a little bit before, but the terms that are used, it seems like the right has a singular talent at sort of trying to like turn those words against you. And you mentioned like woke a moment ago. And to me, it's like, well, we had this whole age in history we called the Enlightenment, right? And it seems like the Enlightenment was an effort for society, at least Western society, to try to be quote unquote a little bit more woke. And now it's almost like so we're pushing back against that concept now, which is insane to me. I was gonna say though, being a grassroots group, I'm surprised you haven't been accused of accepting money from like George Soros or something like that. Seems like anytime you have a progressive, like, you know what I'm saying? A progressive, oh, well, you're getting paid by George Soros. Like, really?
We've
Okay.
definitely been accused of it. I mean, we're still waiting on the check. If George
Right?
Soros wants us a check, we'll take it to buy more books. But yeah, as of yet, we haven't received it. So I keep checking the mail, hoping it'll come.
Right, right.
But that's,
Um,
I joke, but that's what's so frustrating, is that, these moms for liberty groups are popping up all over the country, and they are masquerading as though they are a grassroots organization, when we know that they are very heavily funded and supported from far right think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. They are receiving their talking points from the Heritage Foundation. That's why they all have the same talking points, and that's why they're so heavily funded and already in the back pocket of some heavy hitters in Washington. That doesn't happen overnight. There's there's some serious coordination going on there, and it's
no,
distressing.
you're right. And I think that's one of the reasons why they so adamantly put forth that critique of like secretly being controlled and funded by XYZ group, because I think that's sort of like part and parcel of how they operate. Um, and
Projection.
right, no, seriously, because like if you look, like, okay, for instance, and this is going outside the realm of Tennessee, but if you look at, for instance, when the other guy was still in office, um, and QAnon was not like QAnon has always been, well, to me, pretty much insane, right? I mean, come on, like, what are we talking about here? But it's crazy because one of the things you always kept hearing from them was how, and I don't even really want to repeat this stuff because it's insane, but they were like, what Democrats like took like scared kids and got like the uh some type of I don't know. Do you remember what I'm talking about? They were saying like
Oh,
they
oh
extract some
yeah.
type of nerve juice or something, whatever. But it's like, okay, so you guys are so concerned with this, and if that was happening, obviously everyone would be. You guys had a guy go to a pizza shop like to look for secret rooms. Matt Gates has literally paid an underage woman for sex and drugs. I've heard nothing be said about Matt Gates or
No.
hey,
Nope.
let's get this guy out of here. It's like I thought
Yeah,
that's what
and
we, you know,
you're 100% right, and I wish I had better news about that, but the conspiracy theory overlap runs deep with these types of groups. Um we're seeing conspiracy theories that you just described being normalized and mainstreamed. I mean, if you're even watching the confirmation hearings uh for Supreme Court nominee Jackson Brown, who is, immensely overqualified, having to sit there and calmly, collectively answer absurd questions about her sentencing on, child pornography cases in front of her children, like as a mother. That
hearing, and I quote, "I had mistakenly assumed that child pornography offenders are pedophiles." So I went back and pulled that to show that it was a statement and not a question. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask permission to enter those.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked about abortion yesterday, and I want to go back to that, or misunderstood.
Senator, I don't have a context for that. I believe
Well, I'm going back to the comment on the sentencing commission. As you said, that not all child predators were pedophiles.
Senator, I believe that all child predators are dangerous, that the behavior that they engage in is horrible.
Okay.
That it needs to be taken seriously by the court and by Congress in setting the penalties for their behavior.
So, is it your position that child pornography offenders are not pedophiles?
Senator, I believe that the statement that you referenced was a part of a hearing before the Sentencing Commission in 2012.
Right. It was a meeting, yes.
It was a meeting,
right
and what the Sentencing Commission does is it reviews evidence about various things, and I believe I was
right. And as I said yesterday, the children that are victimized, they don't understand the difference between an offender and a pedophile or a pornographer.
To me, and so absurd to me that she's having to seriously entertain those questions when they are there's no question are coming from QAnon conspiracy theories that have been normalized in the culture now with these far right groups, and it's absurd. There's really no other word for it. Like calling us communists is no longer has the zing that it used to. So now they're jumping to these outrageous claims about child abuse and pedophilia and all that stuff. You don't agree with us? Well, then you must be a pedophile. Like that is the line of argument that we're dealing with now. And how can you have a conversation with someone across the aisle when that's the lengths that they go to?
Yeah, I definitely started seeing a lot of that when Biden was running for office, where like people that were against Biden would almost sort of say that as if it's like common knowledge. And you're just like, you can't just say that about someone, like, has there been an accusation? Did someone like, what are you talking about? Oh no, it's just common knowledge. I don't know. And what you were saying is so true. It's just the overlap of the conspiracy theories and the inability to just critically think. But bringing it back to Tennessee, I would say I feel like that's almost a direct correlation to the complete undermining of our public education system, specifically by Republicans. And when you look at Tennessee, like, I feel like this year, Governor Lee has just had an all-out assault on public education. Like, I don't think he would be displeased if we basically only had schools that were either charter or private, and it was just like, yeah, we don't really have to worry about the public schools anymore because he doesn't seem to value them. And then you look at the legislation that has been passed, a lot of it supported by Moms for Liberty, which to me the name is oxymoronic, because how are you talking about we need to ban these things, but you're professing in the title of your group that you're for liberty? It's almost like Orwellian, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah,
how?
100%. And I said that in my remarks last week, is it's ironic that the group that says they're for liberty accept the liberty for kids to read. Because again, remember, they're pushing back not against curriculum, they're pushing back against books in the library. So that's not compulsory reads. That's, it's not enough for them to control what their own children read. They want to control what my kids read and what your kids read. And that's where it becomes really, really sinister, because they can claim that it's about pornography, or they can claim it's about profane language, but it's not. It's about the ideas in the books. They know the power of books, and that what happens when kids read, when kids have access to information, they become more open-minded, more tolerant, more inclusive, more empathetic. And ultimately that's terrifying to them. But you're right. The push against books, the push against CRT, against masking policies, is all just the umbrella, which is the push for privatization. They want to outrage parents enough to push them out of public schools and push for charters and privatization. You've hit the nail on the head there. That's what this is really about.
Right. And I can't help coming back to, I know Governor Lee took a lot of input from was it Betsy DeVos when she was Secretary of Education under the other guy. And it seemed like that was her goal too, like was privatization of schools. And then if you look at her history, she has no background in education whatsoever. So it's like, so why would you put her in this position to control something that she has no fundamental understanding for? Like, she never went to a public school. Like, every school she ever attended was private. So it's just really weird that they do this, unless you know, or unless you feel like that like there's a goal to this. There's a reason Governor Lee takes someone who made their money manufacturing ammunition and then wants to put them on the Board of Education. Why? Like, why
100%.
does this dude need to be there? Like, what is he representing? What viewpoint? What demographic? What, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, you said it a few minutes ago, their long game for the last several years has just been an all out assault on public education, and all of this, activism from the far right, and the legislation that has been drafted as a result of that activism is part of that assault. Tennessee is poised to pass legislation. I can't recall the bill number off the top of my head right now, but which is even worse than Florida's "Don't Say Gay" bill. And that might win them political points with conservative parents, but let's not forget that there are kids behind this legislation. And when they're targeting our most vulnerable kids, they're most vulnerable to bullying, they're most vulnerable to suicide, and making them feel even more isolated and even more devalued.
I believe that's HB 800.
Yes, yeah. That has real world implications and devastating consequences for queer kids and their families. It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of times it just almost comes off as, I don't like this person or these people, so I'm going to do what I can to make their existence as torturous as possible. It just seems malicious a lot of times. Like,
Yeah, 100%. It's mean-spirited.
and it's
And
go ahead.
well, I just think that fingers crossed that I got my 2-month-old asleep. I think it's just the general terror that the right feels from the inevitable cultural shift that's happening around them. Like despite their efforts, the generation of kids that are in college right now, and my kids' generation, they're poised and you know, ready to be the most inclusive and loving, I think, generations that we've seen in a long time. And there's no stopping that. But man, the last like death grips of this old guard are just like you said, just totally malicious and mean spirited.
I like that, the last death grips. I had a person one time, and this was right when Trump got elected. And they were saying that like they almost like what you were saying, like, okay, so this is sort of like the last hurrah type deal, like he's gonna get elected in on this rhetoric, and then basically we should sort of move past that rhetoric, and but this is like the counter reformation, if you will, and she was like, the only way I can sort of bring myself to be okay with this is maybe this is like the pain that the rocket has to feel before it leaves orbit. Like this is the
Hmm.
strain that you have to go through before you can actually like, achieve orbit. And I just sort of thought about that, like, okay, maybe this is where we're at in Tennessee, where this is that last little growing pain, and we're gonna have to work through this. And then at that point, everyone will get to a better point. And I think that's one of the reasons why there was such a dire push to pass or at least put up all this legislation that we've previously seen coming through the Tennessee State House. Um, to me, honestly, it almost feels like you were saying, like the fear, right? It almost feels like as soon as there was a realization of, okay, no one's really letting us keep the Confederate flags. Oh man, we're having to get rid of the bust of Nathan Forrest. You know what? This has went too far. Now we have to stymie whatever it was that started this current of change from happening.
Yep.
Um, and I don't think this is like gonna be the stop of it, because I know they still have the fetal heartbeat bill that they have going through, and the anti CRT legislation that is already passed. Do you see do you see a space where you guys can get your message across to the point where you can actually start having impact on like elections and things of that nature? Because eventually that's what it's going to have to come down to.
No doubt. I mean, so we're seeing our organization have impact on local elections, and that has been really promising for us. Not only in pushing for candidates who align with I wouldn't even say a more progressive platform, because sometimes even that's too high of a bar. How about just a not awful platform? um, but beyond that, we are supporting and pushing candidates from our own community to run for school board, run for county commission, um, et cetera, and we've seen success in that space. Now, you're right. What we need to do is garner enough support and enough influence that we're able to see movement on state elections, and that's going to take a little more time, I think. But I'll be honest with you that as a result of this book discussion and the attention that our organization has gotten because of it, we are now having conversations with some of the state legislature players that we have not been able to get those meetings before. And I think what we're going to propose to them is essentially this: that if the state Republicans are going to align with far right parent groups and use their platform to write legislation, then the Dems need to do the same thing. The Dems need to align with progressive parent groups because, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, though groups like Moms for Liberty like to pretend they speak for all parents in Tennessee, they do not. They do not speak for me. They do not speak for any of the parents that I know. And to be honest, Rome, I don't even think that they speak for the majority of conservative parents because that agenda they are pushing is so extremely to the right that even friends that I have who sit on, let's see, just right of center, even they don't align with that platform. So I really think the state Dems need to be more strategic and bringing parents from the sane side of the aisle to speak up and speak out.
Definitely.
I mean, did you watch the testimony of Moms for Liberty? They're disparaging our librarians, calling our librarians and our teachers like making horrible, outrageous accusations, testifying on the Hill to this. It's outrageous.
The same people that they were losing their mind because they couldn't make their kids go be with those people for 8 hours a day. It was the impingement on freedom that, you know what I'm saying, like, the kids couldn't be there, but now these people are terrible. No, you're right,
Exactly.
you're right. I mean, they're I feel like they're very disingenuous, um, because what they say for the most part just doesn't pass the smell test. Um, I mean, it just doesn't. Like, no, no. There's
Yeah.
like you like I would feel so much better if they would just come out and say, you know what, I don't want this book here because it makes me feel weird, or it makes me, feel like my kid might think I'm a bad person because I support policy A, B, whatever, whatever. But to be like, oh well, it shows pornography. Okay, well, I know of this book that has like sex in it, it has a murder in it. This one guy like kills someone and then hides it, he like covers it up. Oh, what are you talking about? Oh, the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Like
Exactly,
we
exactly.
can
And I'm so
like
glad you said that. That's what I was going to say. By their definition of pornography, we would have to categorize the Bible as pornography.
right.
Um,
I mean, you
and
had
I said
a
that in my
13 year
remarks last
old.
week. Like,
Go
go
ahead, I'm
ahead.
sorry. Well, I was gonna say you have like a 13-year-old gonna get sacrificed by their father. Like this dude forces sex upon his domestic servant and then kicks her out into the
Yep.
desert. Like what?
Yep.
Like, but if I wrote this happening in like 2025, it gets on the banned book list. But because it's okay. It's just no consistency to their argument.
No, and that's the point that we were trying to make, and what I said last week at the school board is that as a general society, we do not, nor have we ever categorized every piece of written word that has sexual depictions within the context of a greater dramatic narrative as pornography. Like if we did, then practically everything we watched and read would fall under that label, including the Bible, including Shakespeare, and so many other like beloved classic texts. So as you said, their argument doesn't hold water. Are they saying that we can talk about sex and violence so long as it's an iambic pentameter? Like it that
Basically,
that doesn't compute.
as,
you,
as
you
long as it's in old
talk about
English, we're
sex as
good.
long as it's a rhyming couplet.
Right, right. But like that's pretty much what it boils down to if you look at the crux of their argument.
Yep,
We can discuss
100%.
anything, right? Anything's open for game as long as it was written 200 years ago or more.
Yeah.
Like we can't be
So
having
that
any contemporary discussions.
exactly. So that's when I say, and I echo what you just said a few minutes ago, that it's disingenuous. It's not really about the profane language. It's not even really about the explicit content. It's about the ideas. They know what happens to kids when they read the hate you give. And that's what scares them.
Yeah, it's like because they don't want to be self-reflective, they're terrified anyone else will be self-reflective.
Yeah.
Um
Yep.
Do you know, are that like, so, and this is just me guessing, if you don't know, that's fine. But, like, are there positions, like, paid positions? So if I'm the head of Moms for Liberty Chattanooga, am I actually paid by an organization, or is that supposedly volunteer?
I don't know the inner workings of their financials. I know that their members pay dues.
Oh, wow.
Uh, mhm, and I'm
Interesting.
not exactly sure what those dues go towards,
Right.
because at this
Huh.
point, I'm curious to see if organizations like them, if they just exist to be the negative, you know, talking points, or like if they're going to actually do social like projects for the social good. Like I want to
Right.
see, are we going to see, backpack drives or,
No.
book drives on their
No.
side.
No.
So far, I haven't seen anything like that. So I don't know where that money's going.
Um, I don't know how familiar you are with, like, history. Um, I know I I dabble, um, a little bit more interested than most people, and honestly, the Moms for Liberty is almost to me the new Daughters of the Confederacy, and I say that because after Reconstruction, excuse me, after Reconstruction, the United States obviously was going into like the early industrial age and oh, what am I saying? Not early industrial age, early modern America, right? And this was the first time we had an actual regulated type educational model that was supposed to be for like everyone, right? This is the first time everyone's supposed to go to school, compulsory education, things of that nature. The Daughters of the Confederacy were sort of able to get in on the bottom level on dictating textbook curriculum. That's why a lot of people up until like, I mean, I don't know, like the 50s, probably got a textbook that literally the Daughters of the Confederacy read through and said, okay, yeah, this is fine, or no, this isn't good. Because of the states that would order the books that they approved of, which would pretty much be the majority of the South, led by Texas, their version almost became the uniform version because of the volume of textbooks being printed. It costs a
Yep.
lot more money to then change something and print more. So it would be like, this is approved for this amount of books. We'll just have it be approved for all the books, right? Um, and CRT and things of that nature were really an attempt to delve deeper into history without the slant of the Daughters of the Confederacy, for lack of a better term. And I almost feel like Moms for Liberty is attempting to fill that niche. Like we want oversight. We want to say this book's okay. We want to say this idea is okay. We want to say this metaphor is okay. And if
Mhm.
we can do that, quote unquote, it's better for the kids, right?
Yeah.
My
I chuckle because we've made that comparison many times.
oh, okay,
It's
okay.
like it's like the rebooted version.
Right. No, like seriously though, it is. And it's like, and you look on like news articles, you look on TV, and they get credence for some reason. And I don't understand. And that's another thing that sort of plays into what we were talking about earlier about like, is this really a grassroots thing, or is this more like the Tea Party with like secret, strategy going into it? But like, how do you form this group and then all of a sudden the news comes to you to get your opinion on stuff?
Yep.
That's just like so weird to me. Um, but one of the things that I'm sure they were okay with was when Governor Lee rolled out his charter school curriculum. Do you remember that? Did you see that?
Hmm.
Um, Phil Williams, I believe, from Nashville, like a Nashville news anchor, sort of did an expose on it. Obviously, Hillsdale College were the people that they had prepare the curriculum using what was it? What was Trump's thing? He had the anti 1619, what 1776, right? The
Hmm.
1776 project. Um, which just right as an aside, that just shows you how much they don't want to look at context because there's no way you can talk about America and start with 1776. Like, think about a
One,
history teacher being like, "Hey, we're going to talk about America." Okay, well, 1776. Like, well, what happened before? Why did it lead to that? Was it,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, they never want to get into context. They just want you to accept the narrative they're giving you. Did you see the Hillsdale curriculum?
Oh yeah, we spent a few painful hours looking through it, and it's
Atrocious.
shameful.
Like,
Yeah.
there was literally a part that said government started overstepping their bounds in the civil rights movement when they forced integration. And it's like, oh, okay, well, tell me how you really feel.
You know, I'm trying to be measured and be polite here, but it's been a long 8 months of dealing with this type of thing. Uh, you know, we often see it go around. If you wonder what you were doing, what you would have been doing in the 60s during the civil rights movement, what you're doing now is exactly what you would have been doing. And I wonder um, how they feel about that within themselves. If we could imagine who in our society would be protesting integration, I have a good idea who it would be. That's what I'm going to say.
Right. And that's one of the things I do like about history because you can always go back and look. When you talk about who would be protesting integration, um, one of the things that's very telling is look at the proliferation of private schools in the South after integration became the law of the land, you know? You're like, well, why is there so many private schools down in the city? It's not even that big, or this region's not even that. Well, this is why
Yep.
they didn't want to integrate. And I see that same mindset in the charter schools. It's almost like they found a new workaround. And they're like, okay, we have this new workaround with the charter schools, push the charter schools, get as many kids as we can in charter schools. And I'm almost certain if Phil Williams hadn't done the expose on the Hillsdale College curriculum, that would have been what they were rolling with.
Yep.
Like, and so you would have
I
had whole generations just learning this just bogus interpretation of history. And it's just really telling. It's like no one's really trying to hide that much anymore.
No. I mean, I, thankfully it got voted down, but just a few months ago they were pressing to have books about Ruby Bridges taken out of the curriculum because they really did not want to have frank discussions with kids about what happened there. Um, and that goes to the question of white parents feeling like they want to quote unquote protect the innocence of their children, and they don't want to bring up the topics like racism to their children. I would, being a white parent myself, I would push back on that, to say that we've seen over and over again our Black and brown parents tell us, if our kids are young enough to experience racism, then your kids are young enough to learn about racism. And what is there to say about that? Then you're absolutely right. And I have a 9-year-old kid. We've been talking with him about, you know, um, racial equity and love and inclusion of our LGBTQ family for since he could speak, and miraculously he doesn't hate himself. He's that's that's the I think the argument that a lot of these parent groups have is that we're teaching our white kids to hate themselves, and I'm saying, as a white parent with white kids, That could not be further from the truth. You're not giving kids enough credit. Kids are able to have really beautifully nuanced conversations about tough subjects, still love themselves, and still understand things like the need to push for racial equity and gender fluidity.
Right. And that's a really good point. The narrative of like, oh, well, we're teaching black kids they're gonna have a victim mentality, and we're teaching, white kids that they should feel sorry for being born white, or feel bad for being born white. And I just I always have to ask myself, like, for instance, my least favorite elected representative, Marsha Blackburn, right? I've seen her parody similar sentiments before. And in my head, I'm always asking myself, well, do you hate yourself, Marsha? Like you're pushing policy right now that's sort of racist. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't think you hate yourself. Like, why would they hate themselves? They had nothing to do with it. They're freaking kids. But at the same time, going back to the hypocrisy of it all. So you think these kids are going to hate themselves because they're white, and you tell them that white people have perpetrated bad things in the past, yet you tell them that they're born into sin and only Jesus could die to save them. So literally someone had to die because they're so bad, but that doesn't make them feel like they're a bad person, does it? Like, they can still go on with their life with that information, right? So like, why is them
Ooh,
knowing that they
Rome.
were I mean, you get what I'm
That
saying
is
though? Like,
no, it's totally true. That is a whole other conversation. 100%. I mean, I call myself a recovering evangelical. I'm the daughter of a Southern Baptist preacher, and those, that indoctrination and dogma runs deep. And you're absolutely right. There's a real disconnect in I think um, them seeing the parallels that you just described.
yeah, I don't know. I like try not to venture into the weeds too much, but I just have these like to me it's a one-to-one comparison, but I digress. So do you guys have anything like coming up here soon? Any events or anything like that? What would be the best way for someone to show their support for your cause or join?
Yeah. Well, number one, everyone is welcome to join our community. We're, Moms for Social Justice, Chattanooga Moms for Social Justice on Facebook and on Insta. If you are interested in starting a Moms for Social Justice group in your community, you can reach out to us. We'd love to chat with you because it's totally doable. We started with 4 moms in my living room, and here we are, 4.5 years later, and we have a community of almost 3,000, and that's not insignificant in a pretty small, mid-sized city in the deep South.
Right.
So, yeah, we are really heavily entrenched in what's going on in our public school right now. But once school is let out, we will be gearing up for local and state elections. We're pretty heavily involved in that. And then we do fun things now and then. We're going to do like a pride story hour for kids, and some summer camp stuff for kids. So just keep an eye on us on social and see what we're up to. And if you're around, please join us.
Quick question. Do you have to be a mother to join Moms for Social Justice?
Absolutely not. We have dads, we have college kids, we have aunties and parents, and everything in between. We call ourselves the Moms for Social Justice because that's how we started.
I got you. I got you.
Rome,
Do
you
you
can
get
be an official Mom for Social Justice. I extend that to you.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Do you guys do like podcasts or anything? You got a YouTube, anything like that?
Oh, we've talked forever about doing a podcast. Maybe one day we will, but we're moms with little kids, so it's time and noise level is the factor. So no, not yet.
I understand. Look, we need to conversate about that. I think you guys could have a very strong reach if you guys did that, and I'm sure just from talking to you today that you could provide a lot of insight to people. And I found the podcast is really easy if you're concise and have a point. You could probably get a lot of information out to people within like 10 to 15 minutes, something like that. Because you're not really trying to do it for entertainment, right? You're trying to do it for information. So you don't have to necessarily put all the bells and whistles and what I'm saying. You just, hey, this was happening. This is why it's messed up. This is what we can do to change it. Boom, done.
Yeah,
Give
we
us a
should
thought.
we should have some conversations about that. That's totally not my wheelhouse, but I'd be interested to talk with you about that further and get your thoughts on it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Do you know? Because I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. I don't know if I think I might have mentioned that. Are
Mhm.
you guys in Knoxville? Because I didn't see anything.
Knoxville had a chapter that started about a year ago. And then,
Okay,
as often happens in life,
people
moms
got
have life
busy.
changes. Yeah,
Yeah.
life changes happen. So MSJ Knoxville is in search of leadership that wants to just take the reins and go. And if that's you, if there's anybody in Knoxville that's interested in that, please reach out to us because there is a community there. There's a community there that's waiting to get active and ready to get some steering and leadership in the right direction.
Indeed, indeed. I do very much appreciate you speaking with me. Is there anything before we get off the recording that you want to tell people or feel like needs to be emphasized?
I think what what I just said basically is that um, if you're out there in your community and you find yourself feeling just really outraged about what's going on and wanting to get active in your community, let me express from me to you that it's totally possible. If you have one or two friends who feel the same way, or even if it's just you, um, we started our organization with 4 moms, and we have grown steadily since. What I find is if you put yourself out there, you put your views out there, you might be surprised who's feeling the same way and who's ready to get active. And that's what it's going to take if we're going to stand a chance against some of this really outrageous and disgusting legislation. It is going to take normal parents taking some time out of their day to make a phone call to their state senators or send an email. These are very, very simple tasks that don't take a lot of time, but it's going to take all of us.
Indeed, indeed.
Thanks for listening to the Tennessee Progressive League podcast. It was a great conversation with Chattanooga Moms for Social Justice. Make sure you check in with them on Facebook, Instagram, and also check us out, Tennessee Progressive League, Facebook and Instagram as well.